Hello family, welcome back to Dennis Digital Lab. This is episode 1, part 4 of our Python automation series. And in this episode, we are finally going to take what we have learned so far and turn it into an actual MAC address changer. So if you've been following along from the beginning, you should already have two important pieces. In episode 1, part 2, we learned how to manually change a MAC address using Linux commands. And in episode 1, part 3, we learned how to use Python subprocess module to execute Linux commands from inside a Python program. So now, as you can see on the slides, we are going to bring those two things together. We are going to take the commands we were typing manually and put them inside our Python program. The goal is very simple. Instead of us typing those commands every single time, we are going to run one Python script, and that script will execute all three commands for us. So let's quickly recap what we already know, and then we will jump straight into the code. Alright, so let's put everything together. Episode 1 part 2 gave us the actual Linux commands we needed to change the MAC address. Then in episode 1 part 3, we learned how to use subprocess.call to execute system commands from Python. Now we have three manual commands plus subprocess.call, and what do we get? Our macchanger.py program. The whole idea is that we are taking the exact same steps we perform manually and putting them into one Python script. So instead of opening the terminal and typing command number 1, then command number 2, and then command number 3 every single time, we are going to let Python handle the entire process. Same steps, zero manual typing. Now let's look at exactly which commands we are going to automate. So there are three commands we already learned in episode 1 part 2, and we are going to automate them exactly as they are. The first command is ifconfig eta0 down. This takes our Ethernet interface down. We need to do that before we make the MAC address change. Then we have our second command, as you can see here, which is ifconfig eta0 hw ether, followed by the target MAC address we want to change it to. In case you scan a network and you found a target device that has a MAC address you want to impersonate, you look at its MAC address and then you put that MAC address right after the ether. Okay, this is where we actually set the new MAC address. Then finally, we have the ifconfig eta0 up. This brings the interface back up. So the process is really straightforward. Take the interface down, change the MAC address, bring the interface back up. We've already done all of this manually. The only difference now is that Python is going to execute those commands for us. So now that we know exactly what commands we need, let's jump over to our Kali Linux machine and start putting them into our Python scripts. Alright guys, I'm right inside the same project we opened the last time, which is the macchanger project, as you can see here. I'm inside the macchanger.py file, and this is the code we wrote the last time. Okay, now we already have the basic structure from episode 1 part 3. We've imported subprocess and we already know how to use the subprocess.call. So the first thing we are going to do is create our first command. We want to take the interface down. So I'm going to change this ifconfig right here. I'm going to add a couple more commands to it. If you remember from the manual step, it has to be ifconfig eta0 followed by down, and then shell equals true remains the same. And that's our first command, ifconfig eta0 down. Now obviously I could type the entire command again for the second command, but why would I do that when the editor can do it for me? So I'll just put the cursor right at the end here and then do Ctrl D to duplicate that same command, and then I'll change this one to ifconfig eta0 hw ether followed by the MAC address we want to change it to. I'll change it to 001122334455. I'll do 001122334455. Okay, and that's the MAC address I want to change it to. So now I have another subprocess.call line, as you can see here, without having to type everything again. This might seem like a small thing, but it's actually a useful habit when you are writing code. Less typing means fewer opportunities to make a typo. especially when you are working with longer commands. And we need one more command, so I'm going to do Ctrl D again to duplicate the third command, and this time I'll change the command to ifconfig etsu app. So right from this side, I'll clear all, then I'll change it to app. Okay, and there we go. We now got all three commands. Okay, so let's go back to the slides. Let's take a look at the complete script. We have our shebang at the top right here. As you can see, here's the shebang right here. When I go back to Kali Linux, here's it. We have the shebang right here, and then we imported subprocess. Here's the subprocess.call eth0 down shell equals true. That is the first command, and then the second command, subprocess.call ifconfig eth0 hwether, followed by the target MAC address we want to set it to, and then shell equals true. And the third command is subprocess.call again ifconfig eth0 app and shell equals true. And notice something here, all three commands are using the same pattern, subprocess.call. We are just changing the actual Linux command that we pass into the function, at least the very first version of it. Now let's see if it actually works. I'll open my terminal and then I'll list, and I'll go inside my Python Mist projects, and then I'll list again, and I'll go into the macchanger project we created earlier. Clear the screen and then list. And this is our Python script we've written so far. So when I cut it by typing cut macchanger, as you can see, this is the code. And when we come back inside the project, this is the same code you can see here. Let's verify the MAC address first before we change it again. I'll do ifconfig. That is the etsu MAC address. Okay, so put that in mind. And then I'll do sudo and then python 3 followed by the MAC address, change up, enter. I'll put my password, and you see it has executed without any issue. So let's clear the screen. Let's do ifconfig again, and look, we now change the MAC address to 00112233445, just as we did here. Okay, so we didn't manually execute the three commands. Our Python script executed them for us. We've now taken something we are doing manually and turned it into a working program. Okay, so let's go back to the slide. And we've already touched on this. We've run it from the terminal just as I did. I went into the macchanger project and then I ran the macchanger.py file. I showed you the old MAC address and I ran the MAC address changer.py file, and I got no output error. So let's quickly recap what we accomplished in this episode. We took the commands from episode 1 part 2 and combined them with subprocess module we learned about in episode 1 part 3. We automated all three steps, which is down, change the MAC address, and then up again. We also use Ctrl D to duplicate our lines instead of typing the same subprocess.call structure over and over again. Then we ran our Python script directly from the terminal using python 3 macchanger.py. We now have something that is more than just a Python example. We actually built a small tool that performs a useful task, and that's exactly how I want this series to work. You might be looking at this and thinking, okay, Dennis, this is pretty simple. And you are absolutely right. At this point, we're basically telling Python, run this command, then run this command, then run this command. We are not really taking advantage of everything Python can do yet. But remember, we are still at the beginning, and this is actually intentional. I'm using this simple project as a way to introduce you to the fundamentals of Python programming. So we are not going to throw the script away and start something completely different. We are going to keep building up on it. We are going to add features to this same program. And as we do that, I'm going to introduce you to more Python concepts. We are going to talk about things like conditional statements, variables, regular expressions or regex, and more. And this is the teachings that I'm going to follow throughout this series. We are going to start with something useful, then we are going to keep improving it. And every time we add something new, we will learn another programming concept along the way. And by the time you get to the more advanced part of this series, you won't just know how to write random Python code. You understand why you are writing it and how they can apply those concepts to another project. And remember, this isn't going to be the only tool we build. We are going to create other projects as we move through this series. But for now, we are going to keep improving this one. So that is it for episode 1 part 4. I'm Dennis from Dennis the Guitar Lab.